And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Good morning, July 16th, 2024. What are we talking about here? What everyone's talking about. The assassination on the life of Donald Trump. The attempted assassination. Thank God it was a near miss. And thank God he's alive today. And he could continue forward and hopefully be the president of the United States. He clearly displayed he's the man for the job. And he solidified that he should be the president of the United States. That he will be the 47th president of the United States. John, let's just jump right into it. Everyone's been talking about it. Everyone will remember where they were, what they were doing when Donald Trump was shot, when there was attempted assassination on his life in buttfuck, Pennsylvania.
Unreal. I think the whole world stood still for a minute. Some people in the United States actually celebrated. Some city employees, New York City employees, work for the New York City mayor's office, federal employees, basically civil servants celebrating or actually being sad that Donald Trump wasn't assassinated. Some people, a lot of people tweeting out, too bad he missed, wish he didn't miss, things of that nature. Real vitriol coming from the left. You know, we did have a lot of statements come out, say, oh, we're against political violence, but people in their own office are actually cheering on political violence and wish it actually went further. I think overall, my first thoughts is everybody's first thoughts. I think everyone could say the same thing. How did this happen? Eric, how did this happen?
Well, we know exactly how this happened. And the question is, will people actually speak the truth of what happened? So John and I have been on this podcast for about 2 years now. In about 2 years, we've been talking about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, how it's affected law enforcement on the local level, the state level. And now we could actually see that the politics, this woke progressive movement, this ideology to pander to this movement that everyone's included, everyone's inclusive, race, color, creed, that everyone could do the job is infected policing in America. And now, not only has it affected public safety, it's infected security at the national level. When we have someone 20 years old that looks like he couldn't sneak into a Walmart, scale a roof within 130 yards. Think about it. Close your eyes. Imagine you're at an NFL game right now and you can see a football field, just a little bit more than a football field, that this 20-year-old is able to take a shot, several shots at the president of the United States. This is a complete failure. Again, goes back to everything we say, leadership at every level. We talk about small unit leadership breakdown. It's leadership at every level. Leadership is responsible for this. Absolutely. That's my opinion.
I couldn't agree with more. I think catastrophic failure in law enforcement. I think that's how this happened. Catastrophic failure when we talk about Secret Service, when we talk about the state police, when we talk about local law enforcement, when we look at the planning of this event, it's catastrophic. I mean, I'm thinking just watching this, I'm like, this person couldn't have been anywhere around the most hated man in the world. And I began beat up online about calling Donald Trump the most hated man in the world. But in my eyes, he is. In my eyes, I haven't seen anyone face as many frivolous prosecutions, so much hate, so much vitriol. And that's coming from two guys that get a lot of it on a daily basis themselves. You know, I don't even think anyone comes close to this man as far as the level of scrutiny he's under and the amount of hate him and his entire family faces because he decided to run for president of the United States and give his opinion about things. So I think overall, when I look at this situation, I sit there and I say, how does anyone get an AR-15 within 150 yards of the most hated man in the world? How does someone with an AR-15 get up on an elevated position within 150 yards of the most hated man in the world and get time to set up, take aim, and fire shots? Those are my biggest questions, followed by why weren't counter snipers on that rooftop in particular, and why weren't officers down below that rooftop to ensure that nobody was able to climb up?
There are so many layers to peel back here. Honestly, if we actually depicted and actually analyzed every piece of minutia that happened on this particular day. I think it would take us weeks. I actually do think it would take us months. But let's just talk about basic principles that John and I talk about in this podcast. Intrusive police work, which we believe is the bedrock and foundation of policing, tied to the umbrella of broken windows. So we've lost this intrusive police work. We lost the ability for the iconic shield, which is representative of law enforcement, to be intrusive, to watch behavioral indicators of potential perpetrators, adversaries that could do harm to the public, especially the President of the United States. We had local law enforcement out there in Pennsylvania doing their security detail, working in conjunction with Secret Service agents to protect the president. Now, I find it hard to believe that a 20-year-old kid who could not sneak into, he looks like he couldn't even sneak into a Walmart, was able to navigate and maneuver to get to a rooftop. Again, I say in buttfuck Pennsylvania, and no disrespect to anyone that is from Pennsylvania, but in comparison to Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, big cities where a metropolis, where you have to do an extensive canvas of rooftops through aviation, through various different means to get a proper canvas. You could probably do a canvas in Pennsylvania right from the street because of the nomenclature and the ambience and the appearance of it. And what I say to that is we lost the ability for local law enforcement to do their job, to use that eye, that trained eye that allows you to see things. I find it hard to believe that this kid was maneuvering and no one noticed that there were behavioral indicators that something was wrong. Clearly, he would not fit the baseline of what was going on that day. I talk about the baseline for policing. That's what anti-crime police officers do, special operations officers, any police officer, watch behavioral indicators. And I'm sure there were definitely indicators that did not fit the baseline. I'm sure he stuck out like a sore thumb, and that at some point he could have been stopped, right? He could have been stopped, detained, questioned, and prevented this crime. That's why it's so important to go back to intrusive police work throughout this country. But the Democrats have destroyed law enforcement. They have destroyed the profession that keeps people safe, that keeps the public safe, and ultimately the president. And whether you're in favor of Donald Trump or not, I don't care what side of politics you're on. Right now, we all need to come together right to the middle. We need to be American. This picture here is iconic. This represents America. America has to go back to being salt of the earth. I spent a lot of time overseas. I spent time in Brazil. I spent time in Asia. And I can tell you, for the most part, we are revered. We are considered a strong country. This picture right here is the America that people think of. This is the America that you should think of. And the Democrats are tearing it down. They're tearing it down. And we had a 20-year-old kid able to scale a rooftop with AR-15. There's a lot of questions here. How did this happen? I believe it happened because they tore apart law enforcement throughout this country on a local level. And we now see it on the national level. Small unit leadership breaks down. It breaks down to the highest level.
I mean, I'm going to agree with everyone right off the bat that this is a failure in leadership, but I'm also going to disagree and say that this is also a failure on the ground as well. With making both of those statements, I'm going to make another qualifying statement that's saying the boots on the ground could only be successful as the plan put in place, but that doesn't alleviate them from the fact they still failed on the ground. It doesn't alleviate that fact, and maybe they were set up for failure, and I'm not maybe they were set up for failure. That rooftop should have been covered. The below the rooftop should have been covered. Every rooftop in that surrounding area. I'm being told. I listened to Dan Bongino on Fox. He said that they're trained within 1,000 yards to cover the president within 1,000 yards. Now, that doesn't mean from one standpoint. That means in a radius of 1,000 yards, that entire field and the aerial support is there to cover him aerially. Anywhere on the roof, there needs to be air support there, drones, things of this nature, and any elevated position where he could be possibly an assassination attempt could happen. There should be officers guarding underneath and on top. That wasn't there. So clearly there was a breakdown in leadership. Clearly, this is a failure on the part of leadership, but it also put the boots on the ground into a terrible, terrible situation. And yes, Eric, we've been talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. We've been talking about the failures. Everybody calls us a racist for that, but they don't never listen to what we're actually saying. We're saying that the diversity, equity, inclusion agenda, I call it DIE for short. It's a Marxist agenda. It lowers standards across the board. It doesn't lower standards for just women. It doesn't lower standards for just minorities. It lowers standards for every employee. It lowers training standards. It lowers standards to get on the job. It lowers your physical abilities and capabilities. It lowers everything, and it's clear as day at this point. We see constantly the lowered standards, the lack of training happening amongst law enforcement, boots on the ground police officers. But now we're even seeing it in the layer of executive protection. We're seeing huge failures with clear absurdities that we're seeing. And I think we should just get into that a little bit, Eric. What are your thoughts when it comes to after the shots are fired and the Secret Service agents cover the president? What are your thoughts going around that?
Absolutely. So I want to say that I agree and I disagree with you in the sense that I believe that the entire failure is on the leadership. John, you were special operations. You were an anti-crime sergeant. I was a special operations lieutenant, anti-crime sergeant. We were in leadership positions, and we know in those positions that if there were failures or errors or miscalculated situations that we had as a team, ultimately we took ownership and we took the blame, and it was our responsibility. We were accountable for those mistakes. Now, I watched that video, and we have to say to ourselves, ultimately, this is the focal point of their job, to protect the president. And I would assume, and if they're not, that's another failure on leadership, that they're constantly training that, God forbid, they're in this position of where they're going to stand, how they're going to maneuver. And we watched the way they maneuvered in seconds of Donald Trump getting shot. And they looked like they were fumbling. It looked like it wasn't even their first day on the job. It looked like it was their first day of training, and they never did this scenario before. First of all, the female Secret Service agents that were there, and I'm not picking on females, but those in particular were out of shape. They clearly did not have the look in their eyes that they were confident, and confidence breeds confidence. And confidence brings confidence. They did not look like they were prepared for the job at all. They were fumbling. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was embarrassing, but I think it's a failure on leadership. I don't blame them, because some person in charge said that led them to believe that they were capable of doing this job and they could do it appropriately, because clearly they were not in shape. They did not fit the part. They were not mentally and physically prepared for this job. Ultimately, it all falls on leadership. Again, John, you and I did details, POTUS details. They're called POTUS, right? POTUS, President of the United States. And when Obama was president, he would come to New York constantly. So we were constantly doing security details. And remember, Secret Service, they always had their finger on the pulse, and they were sharp, and they were aware, and they were serious. They meant business. Not Donald Trump, but when any president was in town, they were ready, and they were sharp, and they weren't playing around. They were serious. And remember the correlation and the connection that we had with the police department. We were all ready at all times, and the leadership was constantly, we had checks and balances. Not the leadership now, but at the time, constantly checking, are these rooftops checks? Constantly checking, trusting and verifying constantly, and that falls on the leadership. And the rank and file did exemplary because of the leadership. It all flowed together. This was not a fluid operation. It looked absolutely ridiculous. It looked exactly how what we would have been talking about is low standards. It's a complete failure, and it showed. It showed on a national level. This is a problem for America. I'm sure other countries are watching now and say, wow, the salt of the America that we think of, it looks absolutely ridiculous. They look untrained, unprepared, not qualified. We need an overhaul of law enforcement throughout this country. We need to remove this democratic ideology and bring it back. Forget about Democratic, Republican. Bring it back to American.
Yeah, so I agree with you. It definitely falls on the leadership of all of those departments, Secret Service, local police, state police, should be immediately removed. But what I'm saying is, ultimately, you're on the field, you're on the ground, same as a basketball coach that tells you, we're not going to play defense, we're just going to play offense. You send your players out there in a failed stance, and ultimately they get left holding the bag. So it still is a failure overall. You're 100% right. It's a team, and they weren't given the tools to win. So they had no choice. I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all. But let's talk about some glaring things. Like you said, this is an iconic photo, right? This photo is going to be on T-shirts. This photo is going to be on memes. This photo is going to be on everything. This photo right here, I see a clear failure on the part of Secret Service. If there was a counter sniper here, there's another clear shot directly at his head. I saw a million photos like that all over. The job of the Secret Service at that moment is to cover him with their body from head to toe, completely cover his body. I understand he's enraged. I understand he's fighting through at that point. I understand he wants to exhibit leadership and strength to the American people and let the American people know he's safe. And I get all that coming from him. You saw the people, right? We had people who lost their lives here. We had a retired firefighter who protected his family and lost his life there, right? He lost his life. But you still saw the resolve of the American people cheer and stand up when he did this, but he should have never been able to do that. He should have never been able to take that photo. People should have been bigger than him. He's a very large man. I'm 5'9". I could lift a lot of weights for someone my age. I physically superior to most people when it comes to weightlifting and fitness than people in my age range. There is no way. There is zero way. I don't care how much training I have. There is zero way that I should be up on that stage guarding the president of the United States. He is a big man. He needs bigger men. He needs bigger people. Now, if there's a woman that size that could be big, maybe, but traditionally men are going to be bigger than Donald Trump. He needs someone that's guarding him, that's able to control him, that's able to pick him up and lift him off the stage. I myself would not be able to do that. And I think most women are not going to be able to fit the bill. The officer we see clearly in front of him is not large enough to cover him. Is that a failure on her? Absolutely not. Is that a knock on her skills, on her abilities? Absolutely not. This is a knock on the leadership. This is why diversity, equity, inclusion is a failure. She shouldn't be in there. If we have an executive who's my size and she's about my size, yeah, she could cover me. But when you have a guy the size of Donald Trump, you need guys bigger than him. You need people bigger than him to cover him. So this iconic photo is really, when I look at it, I just see failure. I say, oh my God, at this point, we don't know if they're secondary shooters, but we have a clear shot right at his head, right at his chest, right at his hand, right at everything else. When we know what the job of the Secret Service is, to cover him and put their life and put Donald Trump's life in front of their own.
Absolutely. Well said, John. I agree with you. And I think that most people would not look at this picture with the perspective that we have. Yes, this picture is iconic. I think this picture is going to be an infamous picture. It's going to be in parody with the picture of Iwo Jima. It's going to be a parody with 9/11 photos. It's iconic. It is representative of America. It is exactly that. When we think of America, I always say salt of the earth, because America is salt of the earth. America is representative of the entire world. America, this represents strength. However, I do agree with you that there's actually failures in this photo, that they should have had the ability to tackle Donald Trump. They should have tackled him and been on top of him and dragged him out of there, or did some type of fireman's carry. I absolutely agree. Some even may say that, hey, I'm making it seem so simple and taking out the complexity of this, and it's not. But you have to assume that this is such high profile, and the threats that he's getting are credible, and such a high level of threat. You would assume that they're constantly training and prepared for this, and that they have the right people in the right positions. And clearly, this woman is trying to do her job, but she's not in the right position. She's just shielding him. She should be tackling him. They should all be tackling him and covering him and taking him to the car. And again, I always say it goes down to leadership. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was on a graduate officer candidate school, and we learned leadership traits and principles. And one of the most important principles you learn as a leader is that you have to know the capabilities of your team. You have to know the capabilities and the limitations of the people, and to put people in the right positions where they're exemplified, and it shows their strengths, right? We of course we improve their weaknesses during training, but when we're actually performing the actual job, we put them in positions where it's going to show their strengths. They should have someone who has more physicality to be in that position. I agree with you. We have to stop with this ideology of participation trophies, not just in school, but participation trophies in the workplace, and also protect this entire country. We have to be honest with people and say, hey, listen, you're extremely intelligent, you have physicality, but this is not the position for you. Let's find something that's more suitable for you. Let's not put national security at risk. And whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the fact that a former and soon to be the next president of the United States was shot from 130 yards, which is just a little bit more than a football field, in Pennsylvania, in a small town, is alarming. And that should say to everyone, Are you safe on the local level? How can a New York City police officer protect you on the local level if the Secret Service agents, along with the local law enforcement, can't protect the president of the United States with credible threats? Knowing, and I agree with John when he says he's the most hated man in the world. And I agree with you. You know why? Because love and hate is a thin line. So simultaneously, why he is the most hated man, he's also the most loved at the same time. And love and hate is a thin line. We know that. And let's examine that. So, John, let's go into that. Let's examine. You and I were both in law enforcement for almost 20 years. We did details. What do you think that you would see at the detail when you were working a post detail with the NYPD in comparison to this detail? What things alarmed you, or what was something that was glaring that stuck out to you?
I mean, I just want to point out before I even answer that, I just want to point out here is another angle where he could have clearly been taken out after shots were fired to him when he's supposed to be completely covered. Again, I'm not knocking Donald Trump. It's just glaringly obvious that they weren't bigger than him. They weren't able to overpower him. He's a big guy. You need bigger people in this to cover this threat. There's a great photo. I love the photo. I love that he exhibited strength. I love the reaction of people after it. My heart goes out to everybody that was injured and the people that lost their lives and their families and their loved ones. And I'm not diminishing that for a second, but him being up on that stage, the minute after that, he should have been down on the floor, completely covered. He should have been covered the entire way to the vehicle. And then now to answer your question, what was glaringly obvious? I mean, these things are so glaringly obvious to me that roof wasn't covered, that there wasn't enough law enforcement on the perimeter, that somebody was able to bring a firearm with 150 yards. I mean, huge failures as far as the amount of manpower, where they were positioned, their communication strategy, because there's reports now that a local police officer confronted the individual up on the roof with the firearm. And then he backed off of the thing because the individual pointed the rifle at him. Why wasn't the president taken off stage prior to the shots being fired? I'm going to say right now, huge breakdown in communication. There's a huge breakdown in communication, huge breakdown in manpower, huge breakdown in the overall planning and mission of this event. And it's so large that it weighs in on the conspiracy theorist mind. And believe me, I'm one that's been called a conspiracy theorist and a tinfoil hat since I came out and started in public. You know, and I look at things from all ends, right? And people it was so obvious that the Trump camp's in on it. And I'm sitting here saying, why would the Trump camp be in on it? Oh, to bolster him, to make himself a martyr. I'm like, I don't see it, because I agree with you, as much as we're saying he's the most hated man in the world, I speak to a lot of lefty Democrats. I don't really know many people that are voting for Joe Biden. I know Donald Trump's way ahead. I know that the Democratic Party's telling Joe Biden to step down. At this moment, they're calling for him to step down. They froze $90 million of campaign money. George Clooney, who just threw a fundraiser for Joe Biden 3 weeks ago, is now saying he doesn't have the mental acuity to run and he should step down. And their best candidate they have to offer is Kamala Harris, and she has absolutely zero chance of beating Donald Trump. So honestly, Trump has nothing to gain. The Trump camp has nothing to gain by trying to set something up like this. Absolutely nothing. To me, where I lean towards this was a clear assassination attempt. This was gross incompetence on the part of law enforcement and their leadership. And was it criminal? Was it intentional? To me, it appears so.
I mean, these are great questions. We have to look at this and look at the dichotomy of this. And I say there's only two options of what happened here. And the first one is the Trump campaign set this up. That would be a complete conspiracy theory. That would be some deep state stuff. And we could look at it and say, well, yeah, right. It gives him an opportunity to not be a martyr, because if he was a martyr, he would meet his demise, but to be the most iconic person in history, to really solidify and secure his position as president of the United States. Because we've never had an assassination attempt on a politician and they were not the president. So But it just seems far fetched because he did get shot and it was so close to his head and he could have met his demise. Would they actually do that? I would hope not. But the other option, which is clear as day, is exactly what we've been saying: is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, injected. Politics has infected law enforcement on the local level, on the state level, on the national level. This country is at a point where it's just completely weakened and deteriorated. And I think it's done by design, ultimately, to move to this artificial intelligence, to have a police state, remove the human element of the police officer, local law enforcement. We're talking about emasculated police department. We talk about emasculated security in this country. I mean, look at this photo, and I'm not knocking her, right? She is in a position. She was hired. She got the job. Is it really her fault? I think it's the fault on the leadership because clearly has a much more stature than Donald Trump. She can't take him down. She has kind of like her arm up to try to grab him, and she can't move him. And he's a tall man, but he's still an older man. She should be young, athletic, and have the physicality where she should be able to easily maneuver him where he's not able to maneuver her. So this is extremely problematic. You know, I've always been supportive of women. I've worked with women. I've had women partners, but I had women partners in teams, and I saw them in a supportive role, and I appreciate it. And again, as a leader, I saw their capabilities, and I also was able to see the limitations and utilize their capabilities to make us better. And that's why we have to be honest. Someone put out a tweet the other day, and I said, you know what? I don't think this is sexist at all. I thought it was really an intelligent tweet. And the person that put it out, I don't remember the handle, but he said, we don't expect women to compete in sports with men. Why do we expect them to fight with men in law enforcement? I think that was really intelligent. I think that was a great post. I think that women are very important. I've worked with women who have extreme strong leadership qualities. They're very great point of contact. They have a great eye. But I don't expect them to fight with a man. Also, I know the capabilities, and we have to be honest with each other and stop worrying about participation trophies. We need to worry about keeping this country strong and safe. And John, I agree with you. I think that was I would say the number one problem, of course, is that there is a breach in this perimeter. But the lack of communication, the fact that there wasn't communication between the local law enforcement and actually the Secret Service agents to let them know that, hey, there is a legitimate threat at the rooftop with a firearm right now, scoped in and honed in on Donald Trump, and they couldn't maneuver him, is a huge epic fail. And for some people, they're celebrating, say, hey, it's a victory. Donald Trump survived. He's okay. But this is an epic fail. You know why? Because as John just said, there was a retired firefighter that lost his life. Someone lost their life. That is an epic fail.
100%. Let's bring the firefighter up. So firefighter Corey Compatore was killed at the rally for President Trump 2 days ago. Firefighter Compatore died a hero, protecting the lives of his wives and his daughter. A senseless act of violence has changed their lives forever. May he rest in God's eternal peace. Now, it's absolutely heartbreaking, and there's multiple failures, right? Because you have this individual who was killed, you have this man who was killed. He survived the entire career fighting fire. It's very dangerous first responder profession, but then he dies at a rally. So that's one, that the people lost their lives. People were injured, seriously injured. Other people were minorly injured. Other people lost their lives as well. But if none of that was true, just the fact that shots were even be able to be fired is a gross, incompetent failure. So overall, the failure is so high. And again, it's no knock on these women. These women might have the capabilities and fighting skills of Bruce Lee and be able to lift 400 or 500 pounds and squat enormous and run for miles. It doesn't matter. I'm saying stature alone, they shouldn't be there. There should have been big men, bigger than Donald Trump, guarding him. And that tweet was brilliant that guy put out. He put out a brilliant tweet, and it leads to a larger conversation because we're talking about lowering standards. We're talking about putting people in positions that they don't belong in. We're talking about, and that's what we're talking about when we're saying DEI is actually a national security threat, and it's hurting law enforcement, and it's actually turning people who are supportive of law enforcement against law enforcement because they're saying, how could they let this happen? Those people on the ground were horrible. Those girls were terrible. They didn't know what they were doing. And that's when it steps in what Eric's talking about. It falls back to the leadership. Immediately when the shots rang out, you heard one of the Secret Service agents yell. She yelled, "What are we doing?" And I'm like, it should be so motor skilled at that point. You should know immediately we're evacuating him off of the east side of the stage. We're moving him right to the car. We're going to cover him the entire time. I don't think words should even need to be spoken at this time. This is your job. This is your training. How many years of your life for this one moment, and it happens? I don't see that you could say, what are we doing at that point? The only way you say that is if you weren't trained properly. People like, oh, you don't know pressure. You don't know this. I know pressure. I know adrenaline. I know what that feels like. I know what fine, gross motor skills, how they work, how they're diminished, how your ability to think's diminished. But I also have reacted in numerous situations. Maybe it wasn't the president of the United States, but again, I don't put Donald Trump as a god. I see him as everybody else. So his life is no more valuable than the lives that we had to deal with in scenarios very similar to this. And I understand what adrenaline and pressure does to people. But if you're freezing up, it's because you weren't prepared, you didn't train, and you didn't have the mindset.
I'm with you, John. I'm with you all the way. I talk about this all the time. You have to be pressure tested. That's what training is. If you're constantly training, you're constantly being pressure tested. And the reason why you train, exactly what you said, you train your fine motor skills. You train your fine motor skills. You drill. When I used to box and doing jiu-jitsu, there's a saying, drillers are killers. And what that means is the more you drill, the more effective you're going to be in sparring and actually competing. So the same thing goes for training. If they're constantly training and they have the qualified and accurate, confident and competent leadership, the leadership is going to see this training and see that they're actually moving properly. But clearly we can see they're fumbling around. Again, I say this is a complete failure on the leadership because I find it hard to believe that they didn't do this training exercise before to where this was built in their neural pathways for the leadership to actually analyze and say, wait a minute, we're not performing properly, right? Because if you're drilling and you're practicing to get it 100% accurate in training under pressure and under duress, your gross motor skills are what's going to be kicking in. You'll probably get it right 60 to 70% of the training, right? I don't expect when someone's training, I don't expect them to get those fine details when they're pressure tested. The same thing when you fire a rifle, right? When you go to the gun range, you look down your sights, you slow down, you do your trigger squeeze, and you breathe. And to get 100% accurate. But in a live fire situation, if you're in a combat situation, you're looking over your sights. So you're not going to get it 100% accurate, but that's because you're training. Now you're using your gross motor skills. So the same thing applies here. Clearly, we could see that they're not getting the proper training. So I don't blame them. They're doing what they're paid and trained to do. They're under the assumption that they are trained. They believe that they're trained, and that's why they're there. I mean, it would take someone of extreme character to say, wait a minute, I don't think I'm doing this properly. I'm not qualified for this job. I'm going to step down and have someone else do it. Unless, they're lied to, they're led to believe that there's something that they're not. I mean, if we tell someone who's ugly, we constantly tell them, we talk about this all the time. Oh, you're beautiful, and beautiful. You know what? They're going to believe that they're beautiful because that's what we're telling them. And maybe they're being told, hey, you guys are doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Again, you're getting the participation trophy. You're doing a great job. And really, they're not, because clearly, if they were training and they were doing the job properly, it would show in a live situation. Your training comes into play in a live situation under duress and under pressure. That's why I always say you have to be pressure tested in training. Right? We sweat in peace so that we do not bleed in war.
So I'm going to read a statement from former police commissioner Bernard Kerik. This is a statement he put out. Bernie Kerik is now in the Trump camp, and he works for President Donald Trump. So this should alleviate a lot of the conspiracy theories behind people saying that Trump's involved. I think that's absolute insanity. It's literally a net zero gain for him to do that. He's leading in the race. The guy's already been persecuted. He has everyone behind him. He gains nothing by someone popping a AR-15 round at his head and clipping him in the ear. So I think we could just put this to bed now. Here's what Bernie Kerik said, and I couldn't agree more with the statement, Eric. I want to get your thoughts after. I have no faith or trust in the DOJ or the FBI to investigate this attack on President Trump. We need an independent commission to conduct this investigation. These are my concerns. Where was the outer perimeter counter sniper observation posts? Why wasn't there Secret Service or local law enforcement on or near that roof? And I'm saying, why weren't they both on the ground and on that roof? Why wasn't there direct communications from the outer security ring to the inner ring around the stage, podium, and the president? The president detail had several female agents within the inner ring. The purpose of a protective agent is to shield the principal and, if necessary, physically lift and extract the principal in the event of a catastrophic event. Given the size of the female agents around the President Trump, they would be unable to appropriately shield him, and I question whether they would be in a position to physically lift him and remove him from the stage if necessary. Who was the Secret Service advance for this event, and were considerations made concerning those outer buildings? Are the reports true that the Trump team has been requesting additional Secret Service staffing and been denied? These are just some of my concerns, but an in-depth investigation must be conducted by a non-biased investigative group that is not politically motivated, such as the DOJ or the FBI.
Well, we see that the defund the police movement on the local level to local law enforcement has affected the entire country at the national level. No one wants to do law enforcement anymore. No one wants to do law enforcement, and they see that it's not a viable job anymore. You're not protected. There's the level of indemnification is not there. There's no support. There's no vision anymore. There's no clear mission. And there's absolutely a lack of leadership in all forms of law enforcement, local level, including the Secret Service agents, including the FBI. I agree. I don't think there will be a proper investigation. I think that we need transparency more now than ever. We need to know exactly the details of this. But what do I suspect is going to happen? I suspect what is going to happen is what we see from the New York City Police Department. Anytime the cops are involved in a situation and they're involved in a pickle, the cops, ultimately, the boots on the ground, the rank and file, they take the blame for it. The leadership never takes ownership. The leadership would have to take ownership for this to actually be corrected, to actually analyze the mistakes and errors that went here, including if it was a lack of manpower because no one wants to do law enforcement anymore. That's something that needs to be addressed. That's why I agree with Bernard Kerik. It has to be done by an independent source, because if it's actually done by the leadership within, we're not going to get a proper investigation. And if we do, we're not going to get transparency. They're not going to take ownership and blame. They're going to blame the boots on the ground. They're going to have those Secret Service agents probably removed. They'll probably be terminated for inadequate operation, for cowardice, or just completely negligence. But the leadership will not take the blame. We need the leadership to take the blame. Again, I say it all the time. I think the leadership ultimately is at fault for this. And it's not just the leadership in that law enforcement agency. It's the leadership in this country by the politicians that has infected. It's the politicians that infected law enforcement with their woke progressive ideology. And it's ironic, right? The same people in Hollywood that have been in favor of these woke progressive politics are asking Biden to step down at this point. Absolutely ridiculous. They always cause the problem, and they want to pretend that they're going to be the ones that have the solution for it. I think complete failure on leadership. We need an overhaul. We need an independent review on how to get law enforcement throughout this entire country on every level, how to get back to where we were, starting with bringing masculinity back. And I agree with Bernard Kerik. Listen, I do appreciate that those female Secret Service agents did the best they could with their capabilities, but they were not capable to do this job. I agree. I train martial arts. I think that I'm very effective. I think I can handle myself, but I don't think I should be a bouncer. I don't think I should be working at a club. I'm not over 6 feet tall. I can't see a large crowd. There's certain physical attributes that I think you need to be a bouncer that I do not have. And, it's the same thing. We could take a 125-pound MMA fighter who's fantastic what they do, and they still would not be adequate to be a bouncer because it's a different role, it's a different job, and we need to analyze that and be honest with these things.
100%. Frankie Edgar, UFC legend, just went into the UFC Hall of Fame. He's from Toms River, New Jersey. I mean, I stood next to Frankie Edgar. I'm a lot bigger than him. And I'm only 5'9". I'm 210. I'm about 210, 213. I'm a lot bigger than him. He'll kill me in a ring, or if I box him, or I do try to wrestle him or anything. He's high level, but no way he should be bodyguarding me. Should be somebody bigger than me if I was the person. Same true. No way that I should be bodyguarding anyone. He might have skills that are superior to many of those agents, but agents with physical stature should get the priority in those details. So when we talk about make the NYPD masculine again, when we talk about making law enforcement masculine, we're removing DIA. I think it's more we're saying let's just have honest conversations around things. Nobody's sitting here and saying that women shouldn't be in law enforcement. God knows there's plenty of men in law enforcement. And just for the record, I've worked with women who I would not want to fight, who I think would kick my ass in a fight, and who squat and deadlift more weight than I do. So I've worked with some of these women, and again, that probably holds true if they're stronger than me. That probably holds true for 95% of the people in the NYPD. So I'm like, I think, we're not saying that. We're saying let's hone in on these positions that it's like, hey, you know what? You need to be a certain size to be that position. And I think when you get to executive protection, it needs to be that. I'm not saying that if there's a 5'2" Chinese guy, he should be put in place of this woman to meet the diversity standard. But that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing everything's about numbers, fulfilling quotas. Oh, let's get this. We need an Asian, so let's just throw this 5'2" Asian guy to do executive protection. We need a female. Let's get this 5'6" female to protect a 6 foot tall male. I mean, these things don't work. These are number games. It's not helping anybody. It's forcing equity. It's making situations work. And again, I'm going to say it. It's going to turn bad for law enforcement because, again, law enforcement is going to be the one criticized. Again, ultimately, like I'm saying, I agree with you, Eric. It is 1,000% the leadership. But does the coach really get beat up on ESPN on Monday morning? Or is it the guy that's playing the game and dribbling the ball? And here's another clear example of that. Let me bring this up on the screen, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Eric. This is a video that's been going viral. A lot of people talking about this video. So just so everyone's aware, the head of Secret Service, who was appointed by Biden, her law enforcement experience is she was in charge of Coca-Cola. So a lot of people are making the reference, oh, she was in charge of Fritos or Cheetos or things that Coca-Cola owns. But, I mean, I think we could all agree that the majority of people that are in corporate security come from backgrounds like Eric's, where they're military or law enforcement or have high training overseas. They then, in the second part of their career, they go into corporate law enforcement. They go into corporate security for a secondary career where they have the intricate knowledges of how to do presidential and executive protection, things of that nature. But being in a corporate setting such as Coca-Cola, you're guarding buildings and you're guarding inventory. It's completely different. You're not guarding high-level figures in life and death situations more than often. So the question is, should she be put in charge? I put this video up and I made this, I wrote on top of it her statement. This is Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheeto. I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now that we are attracting diverse candidates and ensure that we are giving opportunities to everyone in the workforce, in particular women. And she also has a campaign to ensure that 30% of Secret Service is now women.
You know, at what point are we going to have honest conversations? Democrats, Republicans on both sides. I blame the both of them because Republicans are quiet when it comes to this and Democrats are pushing this. We need to come together and just be honest. Look at that picture. Look at those two women. Listen, I'm not picking on them because they're women. It happens to be women in this place, right? Look at them with their glasses on. It happens to be women. Listen, again, I agree with you. I worked with some women that were really strong, had great leadership qualities. They had a great disposition, great posture. And that's not what I'm seeing from these. Well, actually, three women here. From these three women, right? It's funny. We talk about they want this 30 for 30, right? 30% by 2030. And here we go, 3, right? And we can assume there's about 10 there, so, right? So about 30%. And they look like they're fumbling around. Even when you see that one particular woman putting her firearm away, you can see she's fumbling. She's not prepared. You know, look at her. She's just completely fumbling. I mean, if think about athletes, professional athletes, how much they're paid and they're expected to perform under extreme stress every day to compete as athletes. We should expect even more from Secret Service agents. Completely unprepared. She can't even get her firearm in her holster. I mean, it might sound funny. That's something I used to practice. I used to take out the rounds in my firearm. I used to make my guys do it too. And I would practice with a dry weapon, how to get my weapon out, put it back, so that I could do it without looking, so it would be in my neural pathways. And clearly, they're lacking training here. They're lacking training. Where is it's completely failed leadership. And that's the part I think I have some light in my face here. That's the part I totally agree with you, John, is that people are going to blame the boots on the ground, the rake and file. They're going to ultimately put the blame on these 3 women right here. And I don't think the blame is completely on them. I blame the leadership for not training them, for putting them in that position. Should have said, listen, we have other roles for you as a Secret Service agent. You're not tall enough. You don't have the physicality to save the president. Clearly they didn't. This is a huge, I mean, look at the amount of stress going on, the anxiety of them. They are not prepared. They are not prepared. If they were drillers, they would be killers. They would be prepared for the job. And I like to also go into this, right? I might get some hate on this, but this is the reality. There's a lot of people that are commending the sniper for taking down the 20-year-old kid that was on the rooftop. Away. Yes, it looks great. He did his job effectively, but I'm not super impressed by that because, listen, as a basic Marine in boot camp, we shot from 100 yards in the kneeling position, standing position, 300 yards. We shot from the standing position, kneeling position. From 500 yards, we shot in a prone position. The Marines know what I'm talking about. We weren't snipers, and we could hit a pinhole from those positions with an M16 at A2 at the time when I served, which is pretty much on par with the AR-15, very similar. These are shoulder weapons. There's not much recoil. So I'm not impressed that a sniper took him down from 130 yards away. I'm more disappointed that we had a breach here, just a little bit more than a football field. Again, I say, close your eyes. Just imagine you're at an NFL game. You could see from the naked eye one end to the other. So I'm sure from the naked eye, they were able to see this perpetrator, this adversary, get to the rooftop. I mean, did you see that picture of that 20-year-old kid? He clearly looks like he couldn't get his way into a Walmart, and we let him breach the security for the president of the United States. This is absolutely ridiculous. Again, look at this picture of these Secret Service agents. I don't even want to just say women. They're Secret Service agents. Look at them. They are not capable of the job. They're fumbling around. There's no team effort. There's no communication. There's no one in charge of this team. Complete epic fail. I say it all falls on the leadership. And unfortunately, who gets the brunt of it? They do. The ones with their boots on the ground.
100%. I mean, I put out the post, like, I still carry a smaller firearm, but when I would go to work, I would always carry my large firearm to and from work, my service weapon, and I would transition it from my carry holster, my off-duty holster, into my duty belt, or however the other holster I would carry it with, whether I was in plain clothes or whatever I was doing. But anytime I ever put my uniform on to get ready, I would put that gun in my holster and remove it once or twice just to have the feel of it. And I just said, I haven't been in law enforcement in 2.5 years. I haven't really been shooting with my service weapon. I still go to the range, but I use my other weapons more. I could tell you right now, I could take my service weapon and I could put it into my duty belt, no problem, without ever looking at a thing. And I'm fully confident that I could do that under high stress or anything else that's going on. I wouldn't have an issue. So I think right there, what we're seeing is a breakdown in fine motor skills, but that's a breakdown in training. That's a breakdown in competency test and what you're expected to know. My younger daughter, she was in a karate school and they made her a yellow belt. And I'm like, how the hell is she a yellow belt? She couldn't even tie the karate belt around her. And I'm like, this is basic skill, and then the instructor comes up to me and he goes, she's doing really good. We think we're going to promote her to orange belt. And I'm like, you're going to promote her to orange belt? I'm like, she can't even put her belt on properly. I'm like, I was like, it took me almost a year to go to the next rank when I trained martial arts. And that was like one of the things I needed to learn right away, the basic skill, how to wear your gi, the customs in the dojo, things of this nature, how to wear your belt, how to wear your equipment. So when we do, we're not helping anybody by putting them in positions or putting them, you know, my daughter was like, oh, they want to make me an orange belt. I was like, you're not even a white belt. You're not even trained to be a white belt. I was like, I don't know how they were talking about making you an orange belt at this point. And I pulled her out of the school. Because I'm like, wait, I'm not doing her a favor. I'm not doing her a favor by putting her in something and telling and giving her awards that she didn't earn. I was like, if you could put your belt on and I thought that your fine motor skills and your movements were good, I would tell you. I was like, I don't think so. I don't think you're learning properly. And when I watched this video, I'm seeing right now, I mean, you know what flashes in my head watching this? And it's unfortunate, the Kennedy assassination. When you see the Secret Service agent immediately after Kennedy gets shot, he covers Jackie O and he covers the car and he covers the family, and they're running alongside of that car. That guy reacted. He was there. He was trained. He knew what he was doing. They were running alongside of that car. I'll never forget them. They weren't even observing the threat. They were just protection. They were just protecting. They weren't worried about the threat at all. It was just they were worried about who they were protecting. And when I see that here, I don't see this. Again, forget even the fumbling with the weapon. It's more they don't even know what they're doing next. And who's running alongside that vehicle? They are. And it takes them a while to realize that they are. Oh, let me put my sunglasses on first. Let me check my sunglasses. Look, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around, turn around. Now, look, they're getting up to the car. The car's pulling away without them alongside of it. That's not how that's supposed to work. They're supposed to run alongside of that vehicle until it gets to a point where they get out and they can pick up enough speed to pull away in the convoy.
Competence breeds confidence. I've been saying this for a long time. I used to teach my men and women in special operations. Competence breeds confidence. How do you get competence and confidence? You get it through training. Clearly, we can see there's a lack of training. And training always falls on leadership. The leadership is the one that's accountable to make sure that their men and women are trained to do the job properly, that they actually witnessed and observed them do this in training, in a stressful training environment, so that they could actually perform this in a live situation, just as we see here, defending the president. Complete epic fail. Now, let's just say this, right? Do I think that women are capable of doing that job? Yes, I do believe that there are some. There are some outliers. I've worked with some women that are outliers that could do that job. The overwhelming majority of men and women cannot do that job. That's why we have to be honest. The overwhelming majority of men and women on this planet cannot do that job. But we have to be very specific and hire the most qualified people and get them trained. We have to stop worrying about how many percentage are women, how many percentage are black, how many percentage are white. Let's just get the people that are appropriate to do that job. Are there women that should be hired? Absolutely, but they would have to be outliers. But those three particular females that are there clearly are fumbling. They're not prepared. I hate to pick on them because they're women, but those are the three that are there at the car. And clearly we can see that this diversity, equity, inclusion has affected this whole entire situation. Did we get the most suitable women for that job? Absolutely not. We just pandered to a movement and got people that were willing to do the job. And this is the outcome, and this is the byproduct of it, that a president was attacked. There was an attempt on his life, and someone did lose their life. So everyone there is responsible. Yes, they're responsible there, of course, right? We put the blame on leadership, but they were there, and they are there to protect the lives of U.S. citizens and protect the life of the president. But ultimately, we need to look at the leadership and find out what was the missing details here, and possibly should there be a criminal investigation into this, right? Because we talk about criminal negligence. They're negligent here. Someone lost their life, whether it's because there is no training or they're hiring the wrong people or they check the box on people that should not be there. This is a huge problem, John. We need the best people to do that job, the best people for that job. It doesn't mean, listen, you could get Michael Jordan, right? Someone who's an amazing investor and put him in that position. He might not be the person for that job. We need someone that has the qualities, the physical attributes, the mental capacity for that particular job. We have to be honest with ourselves, who we are and what our strengths and weaknesses are, and put them in the right position. And it's leadership that identifies those skills and understands limitations and capabilities and understands the capabilities of their team, and to put people in the right positions where they're going to exemplify so that the team moves appropriately. And again, It falls on leadership. And who's ultimately the leader and the problem for this? Is the Democratic Socialists that created in this country, that we actually have a picture that looks like that. Because along with this iconic picture of Donald Trump showing salt of the earth America, we have this video that's simultaneously going to be played with that picture. And this video is just a complete epic fail. I mean, John, I know we're picking on her because she's putting her glasses or the way she's fumbling, but it's the whole conglomerate of things together. We can see that just there's a whole breakdown, right? Because they're not confident. They're not confident because they're not confident because they didn't train properly and they just don't have the skills for this job. I'm not knocking them. Right? Maybe there is a job for them in Secret Service that it's appropriate for them. But this particular role to protect the president doesn't suit them well.
100%. I mean, we see it. We talk about it all the time. We do comp videos on here. Someone will send it to me. Talking guy, it's the worst video I've ever seen, bro. It's the worst. I was like, really? It's systemic. I've seen a million videos with people playing patty cake, or they're like tapping somebody, like they're rubbing their back with their nightstick or something. And I'm like, and I'm not sitting there blaming the people anymore. I'm not. I'm like, I'm calling it out. Like, this is ridiculous. It looks terrible, but it's systemic. It's a problem in the training. It's a problem in the messaging. There's no clear, they don't know what to do out there. So they're fumbling. And we're seeing it. It actually affected the 3-letter agencies too. Didn't just affect our local police departments. It's still affecting our federal police departments. Dan Bongino puts this statement out. And I don't know if this is true. I'm going to take it as it is. He has a lot of connections in the Secret Service. He worked for them at one time. He says a decent sniper can easily hit a target out to 500 yards or more. So why is the Secret Service claiming that the building the shooter used to fire at Trump, which was a little over 100 yards away, wasn't their responsibility? Amuse puts this photo out of the target area. So I don't know that. I didn't see anything that the Secret Service said that that's not their responsibility. But if they did, in fact, say that, I'm saying right now, 100% agree with you. Criminal investigation needs to be conducted. I already think without that statement, a criminal investigation needs to be conducted. The fact that that area wasn't covered, I mean, you see it clear as day. There's not that many roofs there. That is a main concern right there. That roof for any of us right there is going to be a main concern, as well as the roofs behind where Trump's speaking as well, right? So you see them over here. But look at this graphic from Amuse. So they're saying that they cover from 100 yards out. If they do, that is in fact in the 100 yards range. Amuse puts this out. He said, so what is it, like Pac-Man, I think he said? And he showed this graphic. So if that roof isn't, so 100 yards out except for that roof. So I'm saying right now, I agree with you 100%. Criminal investigation needs to be on the way. But on top of the criminal investigation and on top of an independent review of everything that happened, every piece of evidence. I want to hear the nonsense. This is national security. This was the largest national security failure that we've seen in our lifetime. I think even when the assassination attempt on Reagan happened, I don't think there were many questions around it as there are now, as how they reacted and how Secret Service did at that time. So I'm saying right now, this is the largest security failure in our lifetime in America. So 100% criminal investigation, but we need to have all of these things answered, and we need to actually start having a conversation in this country about who's capable of performing duties in law enforcement. Should women be banned from law enforcement? Absolutely not. We're saying based upon your physical and athletic stature, there are some people that shouldn't do certain jobs within law enforcement. And if you can't agree with that, you're just not being an honest person.
I agree with you. There has to be certain characteristics and certain traits for certain jobs. And there should be certain criteria and certain requirement. If you're in a position to be, for instance, the New York City Police Department, scuba is considered the most athletic and the most physically challenged unit to be in. And actually, congratulations to you, John. I saw you put your video the other day of you doing pull-ups, and you actually pretty much doubled what you have to have for the scuba team. So I just want to let you know that. Outstanding, because there's a minimum of 12 dead hang pull-ups to get into the scuba team for the New York City Police Department. And John, I think you did 23 the other day with your daughter, and that was when you were cold. So you did pretty much double. So if anyone says that you couldn't do anything in the NYPD, just a building maintenance warrior, you just keep showing that video, show them over and over. I'm proud of you for putting that video, because it shows that, hey, you got two men here that both have masculinity, both are still staying in shape. We both are still on top of our games, and we're no longer employed by the New York City Police Department. Don't you see that as a problem? That's a problem, because that also should be concerns of, hey, are Are there people in the Secret Service that have left the Secret Service? Are they people that are like myself and John? Are they people that should still be there? Were they pushed out because of mandates? Were they pushed out because they've been attacked by complaints? Has their masculinity been attacked? And I'm not just talking about men. I'm talking about men and women that are suitable for the job. And this is what we're talking about on the local level. That's not at the national level. We have to be honest with these things. Listen, I have to be. I don't think I was ever meant to be a doctor. All right. I don't think I can keep my hand completely that steady. With holding small tools, you have to have extreme amount of patience. And I'm honest with myself. I don't think that's a job that I can do. And that's what we have to be honest and know your strengths and weaknesses. So I know I say mostly the leadership, but I after analyzing this and talking about this, I think that the people that are there have to be honest with themselves also and look at Donald Trump and say, well, Donald Trump is over 6 foot tall. He's a large man. And I'm 5'7". How am I going to take this person down? Clearly, that's a problem. Maybe those people have to also identify their own characteristics and say, you know what? I don't see myself suitable for the job. I know the leadership thinks I am, but I don't see myself suitable for this job. This is great, John. Let's get right into this. This is despicable and disgusting. Just shows you how disgusting things are at the New York City level.
Yes, this was a tweet put out by Sal Greco. I think every major account that's on social media, and one of the reasons I can't stand any of them, if you ever check my account, I don't follow most of them, is because they steal absolutely everything that myself, Eric, or Sal puts out there. And this one of them that you've seen went viral. Sal had originally, he was the first person that put this out. He puts, hey, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, you seem to surround yourself and the employ the most reprehensible human beings on earth. You or your administration have anything to say about this reprehensible comment? So Eric Adams had put out a statement that he's against political violence. He's against all these things. So Tyler Barberi, who works for New York City Mayor's Office of Management and Budget, he actually at a time, I believe, worked on the police task force where he would assign funding for the NYPD. I could be wrong about that, but the name's very familiar to me, so I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that. He puts out on his social media, too bad he missed. Too bad. Looks like that is political violence coming out of New York City Mayor's Eric Adams' office. And we're expecting a statement. And honestly, I'm saying right now, Tyler Barberi should be removed from employment in New York City and New York City payroll. This is garbage. This is disgusting. As much as I can't stand Eric Adams, as much as I can't stand a lot in the upper echelon of the NYPD, I would stand up for them in 1 second. I would never, ever condone any type of violence towards them, their families, anything. The type of rhetoric that I use is my voice. That's it. I give opinions, thoughts, questions, and that's it. I would never. This is absolutely, utterly disgusting, and this should be condemned right now from New York City Mayor Eric Adams. You're muted, Eric.
I don't know how much you heard there, but I just want to say, listen, what's that?
We didn't hear anything. You were muted.
Oh, I was muted the entire time. But yeah, listen, we're in complete opposition of New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the entire upper echelon of the New York City Police Department, because we give our critical opinions based on their professional attributes and how they conduct business. But absolutely, at no point would I ever want any harm to Kaz Daughtry or John Schell or New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Absolutely not. I don't hate them as people. Personally, I don't know them on a personal level. But what I do is I analyze and give my perspective on how they're doing their job. But this is just absolutely ridiculous, because if he's wishing harm to a human being who's representative of the entire United States, he is fundamentally, he's a domestic terrorist himself, because he's wishing harm to this entire country. He should be removed immediately. He should be terminated. He should never see employment in New York City again. This is absolutely disgusting. I wouldn't be surprised if New York City Mayor Eric Adams gives him a key to the city, but at this point, he should be terminated. We should never see him again. This is absolutely disgusting. Too bad he missed. This is not professional. It's not stoic. Honestly, he is a piece of shit, and he should be removed immediately.
Absolutely. And, and Staten Island GOP is coming out with some big words. Joe Borelli standing on stage with Eric Adams and Al Sharpton, two of the most racist, hateful, divisive people that I've ever experienced in my lifetime, in my entire lifetime of being in New York City, especially Al Sharpton. We could get into that another day. But, Joe Borelli's up on stage, basically kind of saying what we're saying here is that, like, we it's a right to disagree with each other and it's a right to argue with each other, but this crossed the line. We don't wish harm or to go after anybody, but they're not calling this out. They're not calling this out. And so to me, that's cowardice. They're failing to do their duty. That's the entire Staten Island GOP. I'm not holding back on anybody. Some of you guys I'm friendly with. I'm telling you right now, it's an absolute cowardice on your part. I sent this to every single one of them, and I didn't get one response from any of them because they're cowardly and because more than likely they're looking for that commissioner job down the line. They're not representing their people. So we sit here, we knock the people in law enforcement, but we're not going to knock the people that appoint them. Absolutely not. We're going to knock the people that appoint them. The politicians that we're electing should also be able to tell the truth and stand up and tell the truth and stop playing politics. This is all politics. We don't believe in political violence, but when we have public servants saying they wish the death on somebody, and we're not going to acknowledge that. I mean, this is a huge failure. He needs to be removed immediately. Eric Adams, I know you're listening to this. Remove Tyler Barberi immediately.
Yeah, I think this is a huge statement here at this point. If Eric Adams doesn't do anything, if he does not remove him, that is a form of cowardice on his part. Absolutely. That's why we need strong leadership. And, we hear this all the time. We talked about this. We even did an episode. We talked about the nice guy syndrome. People will say, oh, Joe Borelli's a nice guy, right? He gets along with everybody. His messaging is pretty stoic. But is he a good guy? Because if he's a good guy and he wasn't a coward, he would say he needs to be removed immediately. And if he's not removed, we'll go with the whole New York City Mayor Eric Adams accountable. And ultimately, again, this goes down to leadership. Leadership is responsible for everything. It's leadership at this point. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is going to show his leadership by the decision that he makes here or does not make. Because if he omits and just doesn't do anything, that's a huge sign. That's a huge sign. That's a huge problem. That's cowardice. He needs to be removed immediately. So if anybody wants to know what Eric Adams is for or against, you should monitor what decision is going to be made in this particular case. If we see that nothing is done, you know exactly what he's for or against. If he doesn't do anything, you could say that he's actually for political violence because him seeing this, his job as a leader is to do the hard things and actually say the hard things. He needs to make those hard decisions. And you know what? Even if Tyler Barberi, whatever his name is, if he has a personal relationship with him, he needs to remove him immediately. That's a sign, not just in New York City, but to the entire country.
Let's not forget what public safety in New York City looks like. Let's not take a day off from showing what public safety is in New York City, showing the great work that's coming out of the Deputy Commissioner Operations Office. And this is where we'll start to get the chat a little live going. And by the way, guys, thank you for everyone that's been sending us likes and sending us donations. We appreciate it. It's fully self-funded podcast. Anything you guys can do, we appreciate it. Like we said, we will be putting out more subscriber content. We'll be going to that in the near future. We're just not there right at the moment. But let's take a look at my favorite tweet. This was the tweet of yesterday for the New York City Police Department. Another shark spotted at Rockaway Beach near 127 by NYPD drones. This is just another example of how the NYPD harnesses new innovative technology to keep the public safe. We will continue to use all our resources to ensure beachgoers have an enjoyable summer. So I retweeted it. I said, great. Another shark spotted in its natural habitat. So this is what the NYPD is doing. There was a reply on here where they said they've had a total of 6 fatal shark attacks in New York City in New York's history, but are pretending like they're protecting people in a city where violent crime is up massively. Whoever wrote this is an incompetent moron. And then I read a little into the article, and the majority of the shark attacks were around 1858.
Again, John, you used the term gross incompetence. I have to agree with you. This is gross incompetence. It's absolutely ridiculous that the leadership is spending their time and taxpayer money on this issue. The waters belong to the sharks. The waters belong to the fish. We have lifeguards. We have everything taken into place. Listen, do your own research at home, how to prepare yourself and how to prevent yourself from getting bit by a shark. But when you go into these waters, it's enter at your own risk. the idea that the police department was to check and see if there's actually sharks involved, this is absolutely ridiculous. What a waste of taxpayer money. I can't believe that we're at this point. Who are the sharks in this? You know who the sharks in this is? It's the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department. They're the sharks because they're biting the people to the public right now. They're biting the public. They're hurting the public because they're not actually addressing public safety. This is absolutely ridiculous. Are you kidding me? Kaz Daughtry, first of all, can we talk about the real issue here? I see him in uniform with his gun, his white shirt. Is he a civilian or is he a uniform employee? What is he? Because this is absolutely ridiculous that he's double dipping. We don't know what he is at this point. It's absolutely. I'm actually annoyed by it, and I think the people of New York City, they should be annoyed by it too.
It's honestly, it's unreal. It really is. Like I compare this to I'm everyone that knows me knows I'm at the beach probably a few times a week. You know, I'm at every beach. Wherever I go, there's a beach. I don't even like going into the woods or the mountains. I do sometimes. But I've been around every beach, beaches in the world, beaches around the country. I've swam with sharks so many times. I can't even, I was in a beach a couple of weeks ago on Florida, and a hammerhead was chasing a stingray. It was literally, I'm getting my kids, we got out of the water. The people in Florida, they didn't even move. They didn't even move. They're like, look, it's a hammerhead. It was right. Like I was like up to my shins, like a little bit covering my shins. And the hammerhead was like swimming through. I grabbed my kids. I get them out of the water. The Florida people didn't even budge, bro. Nothing happened. The beach wasn't shut down. They're like, oh yeah, no, they get a little close this time of year because they need to eat. So it was just the stingray was trying to get away. I was like, oh, okay. But it didn't interrupt the beach day for 1 second. So this is like, to me, this is ridiculous. And you could clearly see they never show the land because there's no beachgoers anywhere there. You can see that it's a rock jetty type thing. And so like the shark's in its natural habitat. Like next thing we know, we're going to have shark stat in the NYPD. And the drones are going to be pointing out birds. Look, we got this bird. The bird's in the air. So we've been doing a lot of funny memes. So definitely check us out at the Finest Unfiltered. We have all our handles down below wherever you watch or listen to this podcast. But I mean, this is just it. Again, you're right. Gross incompetence.
John, when I saw this, I said, "What are we watching? The History Channel? This is absolutely ridiculous. I feel like I'm watching the Geographic. This is what the New York City Police Department is doing. It's not like we have protests going on since October 8th every night and day in and day out. It's not like we have 80 some odd patterns going on. We don't have a migrant crisis, but we got a problem with sharks. We got a problem for people out there on Orchard Beach or at Coney Island. Be careful of the sharks. We haven't seen one since 1850, but be careful of the sharks. This is ridiculous. This is the leadership of the NYPD because Kaz Daughtry got caught with his Captain America chair and his PS5 playing in his office, and he had to go through this whole thing instead of just saying, you know what? Yeah, I have this stuff in my office, and in my free time, I play around. Hey, John, Eric, New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast. You want to join in with me and make it a big laugh? And instead, he went on this whole campaign that he's combating sharks. This is absolutely ridiculous. You know what, man? But it makes me laugh. Thank you, Kaz Daughtry. You give me a good laugh. Again, thank you for our supporters out there. Some people did leave donations. It helps if you could leave some donations out here so that we could build this podcast. It is a self-funded podcast. We could build some production. I'm sure you can see I got all this light in my window so we could figure something out to get it going forward. But we got the information out there. We got the content. And I hope you like our perspective, our opinions. And if you don't, we appreciate your opposition. We appreciate your opinions. We get some hate mail on these chats. And honestly, I find it funny. For all the haters out there and you put some of that nasty stuff, I don't care. We actually find it pretty laughable. So keep it going. Doesn't bother us one bit. We'll let it roll over our shoulders. I wish Kaz Daughtry would do the same thing and John Shell. You need a little thicker skin. Let things roll over your shoulder. It would be much better for the public too. Probably better for your own health also.
And the taxpayers, because, I personally, I'm going to say that to combat this podcast, there's been millions in taxpayer money spent to try to bring myself or Eric up on criminal charges, to combat our messaging, to exactly like he shouldn't even have said a word about the PlayStation, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't help that there was a PlayStation. He couldn't help but disprove that there wasn't a PlayStation controller. And then so he goes ahead, he creates this whole video about how they're gonna drop drones on the beaches and they're gonna save lives. And he clearly shows an Xbox 360 controller. But the media apparatus in New York City doesn't, they do a very poor job of reporting. They're political hacks, the majority of them too. You have some good reporters on the ground, but their editors suck, and the papers they work for won't put out what's actually happening. So there's places like that have independent news that aren't sitting there saying what a great job everybody's doing constantly. The people that are actually critical, we call out. When we think they did a good job on something, we say it. When we think it's ridiculous or it's gaslighting, we say it. At the end of the day, just two guys shooting the shit, giving our opinion. And a lot of people have a lot to say about it. And then they're going to use their position of authority to misuse police funds, misuse police resources to attack a small little independent podcast. Absolutely ridiculous. I think it's laughable. And again, more gross incompetency.
Hey, John, when's Shark Week? Because I'm just curious if the NYPD is going to do something for Shark Week. It's right now?
I'm pretty sure it's now. I think it's
so maybe for Shark Week, listen, Kaz Daughtry just have maybe just a suggestive idea, just as we do for Pride Month. We dress up the cars and for breast cancer. Maybe we could dress up the vehicles for Shark Week. We can put like sharks on it. We could put pictures of you holding your PS5 controller and sending the drones to check out the sharks and stuff like that. That'd be great. I love to see that. And John Shell, we could have pictures of him carrying water on the beach. Bringing it to Kaz Daughtry. I think that would be great stuff. Listen, guys, thank you so much for watching here. New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast, your 265 Police Live series. This is our perspective on the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And weigh in with us. And John, you got anything want to end it out?
No, it looks like it's July 17th is when Shark Week started. So now we're going to have the NYPD's own version of Shark Week. They celebrate everything else. So Kaz, if you're watching, if you could send down, get a little decals on some of the RMPs, get a little Shark Week going, much appreciated, brother. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Ladies, I hope you guys didn't take offense to any of this. We're just trying to start the conversation. So anybody has any opposition, anything you want to say, anything you think we missed, anything you think we offended you on, go right ahead. Let us know. We'll bring it up. We'll talk about it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Appreciate it.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888-901-BLUE.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?